Yeah, I'm full-time, but generally at SACAP, most people it's full-time is part-time because no one goes to school every day. There is no class that goes every day.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
So Camisa, what I mean by part-time, it means that you're working full-time job. You might be married, you might have a family. So there's generally two types of student. There's the sort of the mid-career student, the student that's sort of in their 30-ish and a bit older that started studying and they're doing it part-time. And then you've got students that just finished school and they're studying now. They're sort of not working, they go into classes and that type of thing. Does that make sense? So when I say part-time versus full-time, that's kind of the distinction I make. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay.
Okay. Right. And the rest? Full-time. Bryce is also saying full-time. Okay. Domingo is also saying full-time. All right. So, and Danica is part-time. So it seems to be a bit of a mix. All right. Okay, great. No, that's good to know. Just to get a sense of where people is at. So once again, good evening, everybody. So let me just give you a bit of a background in terms of how this course fits into the greater scheme of things. I take it all of you are doing BSOC, Psych, and Business Management. And so as part of your business management, and also I think you'll be doing economics, organizational behavior, you'll be doing a couple of other courses that's all businessy related. And I know that SACAP sort of changes the course descriptions a bit to make them sound sort of social sciencey and a bit different. So if you were doing a BCom, you'll be doing Business Management 1, Business Management 2, Business Management 3. And that's how the scaffold. And Business Management 3 generally is also called Strategic Management because the three of them would sit together like that. You will do, and that's your major. So then you will major with a degree in Business Management as one of your majors, as opposed to at SACAP, where I think they're sort of changing the wording somewhat, and also the way we've designed, because I'm also part of the design team for SACAP, the way we design the courses are also, we try to move away from the stock standard if you are doing it at a university and you're doing a BCom, in order to add the sort of SACAP spice to it, if that makes sense at all. So it's called Business Management Principles and Business Management Concepts and Philosophy. Which is philosophy is a bit of a stretch, if I must say so myself. But what I'll try to do, especially with these sessions that we have online, is to go beyond just the textbook and things, and try to bring in a bit of my experience and a bit of sort of my background, and talk about business management in a more general way than purely out of the textbook. I'll make sure that all the slides are online. So after the session, I'll post the slides. I'll post a recording of it. I also tend to edit the recordings a bit to cut out some of the fluff to make sure that the recordings are.
My name is Lisa.
What's that?
My name is Good Boy. My surname's Afrikaans. It was my grandfather's name, so they changed it to the family surname. They thought we might give some.
Okay, sorry, Camisa. There we go. Sorry, I had your line there for a minute. So I will try as much as possible to talk through not just slide after slide and just making boring, but to talk through a bit about business management and the subject area as a whole, because essentially this course is what we would call an introduction to business management or business management fundamentals, or business management 1A, and it's a combination of a couple of things. But essentially it is about business management, Whenever you put the word management next to something, human resource management, project management, the word management essentially means four things. It's what we call POLK. And POLK is essentially planning, organizing, leading, and control. And that is what we call the management process. The process of managing. You put a plan in place, you organize the resources, you lead through motivating the resources, your staff, people, in order to achieve that plan. And then you put a control process in place in order to check that you've achieved your plan. So whether it is project management, human resource management, business management, strategic management, they all follow the same process. So whenever you hear that word management, always think of POLK, planning, organizing, leading, controlling, which is simply a process. We plan, we organize the resources, we lead the resources, one of the resources being people, and then we put a control process in place. A control process can be anything from a system where you check where you're achieving your KPIs, or a system where you verify certain data. So that a control system can be anything. So essentially, when we talk about management in any form, it always comes down to this concept of POLK, or this process of POLK. So this is very much an introductory course. It is very much a sort of introduction to business management. Now, business management as a subject area is actually quite big. It is and I was talking to Kamisa earlier, and I was telling her that business management is actually quite boring. But all of the different parts of it is what makes me excited. So you have different parts of business management as a subject area that you can specialize in. Now, my specialty is in leadership development, which is part of a leadership development. Another part of business management talks to organizational development, which is the organizing. Organizational development or organizational design actually sits. So if you think of business management as a subject area, it's a combination of many different things. You've got economics on the one side. You have on the other side then what we call organizational psychology, which sits close, and all of these are social sciences. So business management is social sciences. It's part of the social science faculty, or part of the social science umbrella, because it deals with people. And as much as we try to, with all of our theories, and you'll see there's so many theories, and there's so many blocks with arrows, and there's so many pyramids, and there's so many people that call different things, and all these theories named after different people, Mintzberg and Porter and Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Herzberg's, all these people and all these theories where we're trying to formalize it, where we're trying to make it as if it is a hard science. Business management is not a hard science. Hard sciences are things like chemistry, physics, mathematics, astronomy, geology, and so forth. Business management is not a hard science. Although if you read through the textbook, you kind of feel like it's all this rigid stuff. It's all these theories, all these blocks, all these arrows. But it's not. At the heart of all social sciences lies people, and how people relate to one another, whether they structured around societies and communities, sociology, whether they are structured in bigger and how they relate to each other individually, which is sociology, and how they're structured around in communities, social anthropology, how they relate to themselves, psychology, the process of acquiring knowledge and understanding knowledge, philosophy, and then economics, which is the trading of and movement of goods and services within a system, which is economics. And then you've got business management, which essentially is the understanding of how people come together in a structured form, organization, in order to achieve specific objectives, the selling of goods and services, in order to generate a profit through those activities that they perform. But it's still people and how they relate within this structured sort of in the structure that has these specific boundaries, but it's still a social science. So whether it's social anthropology, where people are structured around communities, around common values and culture, rituals, and all of those things, within sociology, in which people, how they relate to one another, and whether it's through psychology and how people relate to self, and whether it is philosophy, which is the seeking of knowledge, understanding of knowledge. It's pretty much a social science. So that's a bit about my rant. So that's the little box where we are in. And it's more of a amorphous sort of blob. So don't think of it as a box, these firm things, but it's more of this amorphous blob in which business management sits. And that is my approach, because my degree is a social science degree. I didn't study business science. My degree is social science, and my degree is in philosophy, and it is in organizational psychology. Years later, I did a management MBA, which is very much around giving you the tools and the skills in order to manage organizations. And at the moment, I'm doing my research in leadership development, my master's thesis. And so my approach is always from a social sciences point of view, as opposed to from a commerce point of view, which people that have come through commerce, through the commerce faculty, through economics, with business science, with statistics, they have a very different viewpoint around management, business management, or management science, because we use the two differently. And the reason why we try to call it management science is we want to make it a science. We want to make it this hard science where we can prove different things with different theories, but we can't. Most of the theories work in some cases, in some context, but they don't work in all context all of the time. And hard science, or the scientific method, is essentially to prove that a given set of a given theory or a given form can work in all situations all the time, and it is and you can replicate it with the same result. But a lot of our management theories, it works in some cases, it doesn't work in other cases. So that's a little bit about the subject area, and welcome to it. So tonight is really a recap on session 1 and session 2 themes, focusing a bit on theory, application, and business settings. So let me pause there quickly and just do a quick round robin for those that have joined us this evening. If you can maybe just quickly just introduce yourself with your name and just tell me a little bit about what you do. If you are a full-time student, you can just say, I'm a full-time student and this is my degree. Just 2 sentences very quickly, just for us to get to know one another.
I'm Kumisa, and I'm doing a Bachelor of Social Science in Business Management and Psychology. I am full-time, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kumisa. Welcome.
I'm Danica. I work as a paralegal from Monday to Friday, 8 to 5. And then I'm also a mom to a toddler, which is more stressful than working, actually. And I decided to study psychology and business management together, seeing that I work in a law firm and that I was given the responsibility to handle family court matters. So I decided I want to study the psychology behind why people do the things they do and end up where they end up.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Danica. Anyone else? You also don't, if you don't want to jump in, you also don't need to. You could just type it up in the chat as well. I'm comfortable with that.
Hi, I'm Mila. I'm a full-time student at the moment. I'm doing social science and then majoring with psychology and business management. I matriculated last year, and yeah, I'm super excited about this module.
Awesome. No, welcome, welcome.
Hello everyone, I'm Bryce. I'm also doing the same degree as everyone else, full-time.
Okay.
I'm also
Great.
a first year out of matric. Yeah.
Welcome. Nice. So I'm getting a sense of who the folks are.
Evening, everyone. I'm Tinguva, and just as Bryce said, I'm doing the same thing as everyone else. And
Awesome.
yeah,
No,
nice to meet you all.
Yeah. Awesome. Great stuff. Anyone else? Okay, that's about it. It sounds like, I think. Yeah. Great. So we had a brief chat earlier, and we were just trying to understand the rules of engagement. So this course is noted as a online flexi course, but so it doesn't have a fixed meeting time, weekly meeting time. And we kind of Thursday evenings work for me. Thursday evenings at 7:30. I don't know whether it's too late or whether I should make it earlier, maybe at 6:30. I'm going to post a poll and ask folk. The alternative is on a Saturday morning, although that is just not a great time. But Thursday evening can work. Alternatively, maybe a Tuesday evening as well. So I'll post it on the poll and just see where folks are at. Whether 6:30 would be a bit too early for those traveling still home, or whether 7:30 is too late. Because I know for some of you that are full-time students, you might have spent the whole day on campus, and now you have to log on to a session 7:30 in the evening, and that might be a bit too late. So I just need to find a bit of balance in between. So I'll post a poll, and then you guys can let me know. So what is management? I just spend 10-15 minutes telling you about how I see it. But essentially management, so whenever we use the word management, as I said earlier, is about POC, that process of planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. The process of putting a plan in place, setting your objective, gathering your resources, and there's 3 different types of resources, whether it's physical resources, financial resources, and people. And then leading your people, motivating, encouraging, and setting clear targets, and then putting a control process in place in order to make sure that you achieve your plan or your organizational goal. It's about balancing efficiency and effectiveness. Now, this is where things get interesting, because there's a part of business management or a subsection of business management which deals with efficiency. It's all about understanding how do you develop a system. And again, it is the way those folks see an organization. They see an organization as a system. So there's different ways of looking at organizations. Some see the organization as an organism. It is something that is alive, and it is amorphous, and it changes, and it consists of people, and people have emotions and feelings and all those things. And then others see it as a finely tuned clock, almost like a mechanistic, and that is the mechanistic point of view. And if you go back, and I'll actually post that video, because there's a very nice video on sort of talking about the history. I should have thought about that. Talking about the history of management and where it comes from. So management comes back from way back. So Industrial Revolution happens. Before that, you had a shoemaker, or not a shoemaker. You had a what did they call them? A person that makes shoes. It just slipped my mind now. And they had an apprentice, and they will teach that apprentice for the next 5-10 years until they become a master, a master shoemaker, or a seamstress, or you will teach and skills would be sort of passed on, and it is small scale. You would make just enough. The butcher makes just enough for the local town, and the Industrial Revolution happens. Suddenly you have a different way of making things. Suddenly you had a more industrial way of making things. Transportation changes. You had trains, you had steam engines. Suddenly you had machines that are built to be able to make things faster. and people are coming together, sitting under one roof, whereas before it was 2 or 3 people in which the owner, the master maker, would delegate authority every day and go around and talk to each person and say, you have to do this, you have to do this today. And then at the end of the day, they will check it because it's 3 or 4 people. Now suddenly you had this massive factory that didn't exist before. And now suddenly you had hundreds of people. Now the owner of the factory cannot go around to each person every day and tell them what to do. So what they did is they delegated that authority to a group of people that they said, yeah, you have my authority as the owner of the factory to go around telling people what to do. And those were the managers. They were then given the authority to manage on behalf of, so they were invested with the authority to manage on behalf of. And there was different, at the beginning, there was different ways of managing. There was very much, I mean, some of the grandfathers of management science, as we like to call it, was Weber, that had a very much a bureaucratic approach to management, in which, the organization is this sort of hierarchy of delegation, and this person does this, and it's very finely determined that this person has this level of authority and so forth, very much bureaucratic, and he's the grandfather of bureaucracy, and that is where bureaucracy comes from, and that was transferred into government organizations. Remember, we'd never had a indication we never had a factory before. Factories did not exist. Organizations in the form of vast amount of people coming together to transform inputs into outputs into products and services didn't exist. So what we did is we looked at 2 other organizations that existed that had a strict hierarchy and had a control system in place, and that was the church and it was the military. So many of the terminology that we still use in organizations, command and control, line manager, so many of those terminologies, chief operating officer, chief of this, chiefs, it's old military terms, and the church hierarchy. We looked at those structures and we transferred those structures into organizations, and that is how through industrialization, how people like Weber, people like Marx, people like Taylor, which is people like Henry Ford, all of those sort of started building organizations, factories, these massive factories that produce goods and services, specifically goods, modeled on this sort of strict hierarchy, line of control, in order to ensure that instructions are followed and that products are made. So that is really sort of, and the history of it is fascinating. I love trying to understand how did these things come about and how did words like chief officer came about, and it's a military term, So business, the management science as a field of study is very interesting. But now management science is one of those interesting things. So SACAP teaches applied psychology, which is different from psychology. So the way they see the importance, or the way they teach their social workers, their counselors, their psychologists, is through a more practical, applied methodology. To say that, listen, once you finish here, you would be able to do what you need to do. You don't need to go for further training. And so in management, when we talk about business management, when we talk about management science is the theoretical framework and structure around understanding and trying to make sense of this thing that's a business. We no longer call them businesses, we now call them organizations, because it's an organization. It's a group of people that are organized around a specific goal and a specific outcome. But then we've got management science, which is trying to understand what that is. And then you've got the practical application. So how do I run a business? What are the skills and the behaviors and the things that I need to do in order to execute, to develop a strategy, and then execute this strategy? So that's almost like the practical side of business management, the how, as opposed to management science, which is the what. So in undergraduate, when the 3 years that you're going to spend studying this area, you pretty much are going to, the way we've designed the management courses was trying to give you a bit of both. The management science, understanding the how, understanding the why, understanding the history, understanding the frameworks, understanding the theories, understanding the things that drive the way we understand things. And then also the practical application on the other side is that once you leave, how would you be able to manage a team? What are the things that you need to put in place? What's a KPI? What are objectives? What are goals, etc. So it's that balance that you constantly that tension that you constantly hold between the practical aspect of it, the how to do it, and the more understanding around the theoretical frameworks and the why and where does it come from, etc. So that's a bit of that. So the factors of production. So this is fundamental. What are the factors of production? Some of those inputs. They're natural resources, they're capital or financial assets, they're labor, which is people. And then there's a fourth one, which is entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is essentially the spark. And again, entrepreneurship is an area of study, a separate area of study. And some would say you can't really teach entrepreneurship. Other people are born with it, but it's a separate area of study. But those are the four factors of production, which is natural resources, which can be anything. If you're making a widget that's made out of rubber, then a natural resource would be rubber that you put in. There's capital, which would be the monies that you borrow from a bank, or the investors give you that money in order to buy the equipment and machinery to transform that rubber into your widget. And then you've got people that you employ and pay that takes the rubber in order to transform it into the widget that you then sell at a profit in order to achieve your goals. You want to sell 100 widgets that you've made out of rubber. You have to pay your wages, the labor. You have to pay back your investors for some of the money that you borrowed from them. And you also have to buy your rubber as the natural resource, as the input. And hopefully you are, and the last part, if you look at chapter 1, it talks about the value chain. Porter, management scientist, it's actually a strategist, but Porter talks about the value chain, how you take this raw material, rubber, you transform it through adding labor, through buying equipment and machinery with the capital, through innovating some sort of entrepreneurship, which is about innovation, developing and selling to a specific market, entrepreneurship, and transforming that rubber into something of value that you then sell. And hopefully what you're selling is of greater value than all of the inputs that you've put into making that widget. Essentially, those are the four areas: natural resources, capital, labor, and entrepreneurship. So the role of the entrepreneur is to take something, transform it, add value to it, transform it, add value to it, and sell it to a specific person in a specific market, come up with something that's innovative, something that is different, and then add value to it, and then sell it at a greater monetary value than all of the inputs that you've put into it. They decide on the product, the service offering, they decide on, so it's that crucial, as I said earlier, that crucial innovation and value creation that they do. Business location services, I'll pass on this. You guys can read through it. What I really want to get to is, okay, the management cycle we talked about earlier about Polk. It starts with identifying customer needs. Resources are transformed through this process, and managed activities deliver different outputs. Rubber gets transformed into a widget. That widget then gets sold at a marginal profit. And the cycle continuously through improvement gets better and better, more efficient. So efficient is about time. Effectiveness is about quality. So always think about efficient as time, effective as quality. And organization aim to be both efficient, productive, time, do a lot more with less, with less people, and effective, deliver great customer service, great product at a great margin in order to deliver the relevant profit or marginal profit for those that invest and have given the entrepreneur the money to buy the equipment and the raw materials to transform it on something of value. All of this takes place within an environment, what we call the business environment. It is the macro environment is where everything happens. It is where everything happens. The macro environment is where the business operates in. The business has no control over it, and it influences the business substantially. The political environment, and we use an acronym for it. Does anybody know what that acronym is? PESTLE? Some of you might have done it at school, business studies, for those that did business studies at school.
Can I give that one a go, sir?
Of course you can. Yes.
So P, we've got political.
Yeah.
And then E's for economical.
Yeah.
Then you've got social, technological, legal, environmental.
Yeah. So it's either PESTLE, it is PESTLE. Some call it just PESTLE. Thank you, Bryce. It's not Bryanston. It is Bryce. Thanks, Bryce. And that's the big environment where all organizations operate in, whether you're an organization for profit, a business, whether you're an organization that delivers social services, an NGO, whether you're an organization, NGO, a church, whether you're a governmental organization that delivers products and services for the community. They all operate within this environment, and this environment has an impact on how the business makes decisions and how they allocate resources. The market environment is closer, what we also call the industry environment, which is suppliers, customers, and competitors. The two C's and the S, CCS, customers, competitors, and suppliers. And Porter has also a lovely theory for this. If anybody knows, Porter's 5 forces is a theory or framework which Porter uses in order to best explain the industry environment or the market environment. And then we've got the internal environment. So this is the environment in which the business operates. This is its internal environment. This is its own resources. This is its own plan. This is its own assets. This is its own people. This is its own capital that it has, and its own direction that it sort of charts for itself, its own sort of innovation, and all of that. So the organization exerts a influence to the outside, and the environment exerts an influence towards the inside of the business. So we talked about the different types of business environments, and then understanding it, micro, market, macro. Each layer has a unique business impact, and effective management requires full context. Simply means that you need to understand and be agile enough to be able to respond to the environment in a greater context. So let me move on to what we call the value chain, or Porter's value chain approach. So where is my value chain? Oh, there we go. Porter's value chain. So this is now an attempt by a researcher to make sense of something and to propose a framework, in this case a theory, to best understand how those factors of production, natural resources, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, how they get transformed into what we call margin or profit for the organization. So, and Porter proposed this value chain sort of framework, and he says that in an organization there is different functions which are responsible for things that come into the business, and these are raw materials that come into the business. Your rubber, if you're making widgets, comes into the business. There's certain functions which transform that rubber into the widget. There's certain functions that make sure that that widget gets to its customer, into the hands of the customer, outbound logistics. Logistics is just what we call supply chain, or logistics is just a fancy word for a truck moving things around in trucks. Marketing tells the customer about how great the widget is, and after-sales service deals with, once the customer has the widget, how well do we look after the customer then through after-sales service. And those are the primary activities, whether you're making widgets, whether you're delivering accounting services, they all have this value additive process. Something comes into the organization, it gets transformed, and we tell our customers about it, and then we move it into the hands of the customer. And all of that is what Porter says is supported by a range of other activities within the organization, which is the organizational structure, which is the human resource function, which looks after the people, technology, procurement, IT, and all of these other functions that you have in the organization that supports this process of adding value. I've included a video as well for you, so that you can have a look as well on that. Moving on to defining management and its different functions. Management optimizes. So I don't like that word about optimizing, because there we're talking about efficiency again, as opposed to effectiveness. And oftentimes when management science, or when we have management theories, it's oftentimes very what we call mechanistic. And that was really Ford, Taylor, through his scientific management, was really at the beginning. They came around about the late 1800s and early 1900s. Their theories was very popular, because it was all about efficiency. I mean, Taylor, he even called his framework, he even called scientific management, which literally was standing around with a stopwatch to count how long does it take you to fold that envelope and lick it and close that envelope in order to send it away. And if it takes you 5 seconds, then in a minute you can do so many, and in an hour you can do so many, and therefore your productivity is measured by that. And yes, scientific management, especially in large-scale manufacturing, scientific management has a place, because it's about efficiency, it's about minimizing waste. But when you're talking about people, people are different. Each person is different. Each person is an individual. And each person comes to work. Today they may make 100, tomorrow they may make 101, and the day thereafter they may make 95. But scientific management and Frederick Taylor's idea was that people are machines. They are robots. It's this idea that an organization is this finely tuned clock, that if you just add a bit of oil here, if you just add a bit of oil there, just add a bit of oil here, you can make it run smoother and smoother. And the smoother it runs, the more efficient the organization is. And that changed over time. We had sort of Weber coming in with bureaucratic management, and much later we had different views of organizations, and this tension between efficiency versus effectiveness, which is essentially what I said: speed, time, doing more with less, doing it faster, as opposed to effectiveness, which is about quality. All right, earlier I mentioned POLC, which is planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. I'm not going to go through that any further. I just want to briefly touch on this, how organizations are structured. So different types of managers that have different functions. You've got what we call frontline managers, and then middle managers, and then we have top managers in the organization. And you'll find that the organization is very much structured in that particular way, in which you'll have, on the one side, you'll have a middle manager there, which is head of the department, and then they'll have a whole lot of different other managers below them. So you'll have a head of department, head of marketing, and then underneath them, they'll have a brand manager and another brand manager, and then another brand manager, and underneath that, they'll have a brand assistant, an assistant brand manager, and then a brand assistant, and then an intern, and so forth. So these would then be, that would be a top manager, which is the CEO. They determine strategy. They look after long term. They make different types of decisions. You've got your head of department, which would be your middle manager. And then you've got your frontline manager. Frontline manager is just the manager to execute, and each one has a different role to play in an organization. Managers also need specific skills. We talk about technical, interpersonal, and conceptual skills. Technical skills are simply, if you are a marketing manager, or head of marketing, you should be pretty good at marketing. You should understand how product placement work, how marketing communications work, how social media works, etc., etc. So those are what we call technical skills. As a head of marketing, you should also be very good at interpersonal skills, which means the ability to persuade, the ability to motivate, the ability to deal with conflict, the ability to issue instructions and communicate. And then conceptual skills. Conceptual skills simply means cognitive skills or thinking, the ability to solve problems, the ability to take vast amounts of information, take it, digest it, and being able to communicate it. So as you move up the organization, the more your conceptual skills goes up, the more your interpersonal skills goes up, but the less you use your technical skills. As you move way up in organization, your conceptual skills is required a lot more. Your interpersonal skills second, and your technical skills third. A top manager or the executive, the marketing executive, does not need to understand the nitty-gritty of putting a marketing communication campaign together, but they need to understand the long-term strategy of where the organization is going with their brands and the way they see their customer for the next 5 to 10 years. And that requires cognitive skills. As I said, technical, interpersonal, the ability to communicate, conceptual, see business as a whole, diagnostic, problem solving, communication, convey ideas, information, decision making, recognize under problems, and then time management, which is about priority. Again, it's about efficiencies. In organization, as I showed you earlier, there's different parts of the organization. So you might have a head of marketing, but then you might also have a head of finance. You must also have a head of operations. You might have a head of something or the other, depending on what type of organization it is. And each organization would have these separate functions. And if you go back to Porter's value chain, you'll see that some of these support functions are these different functions in the organization. That operations, there we go, outbound logistics, marketing and sales, they are those very functions that we spoke about further down. Financial functions, operations, human resource management, research development, etc., marketing, and so forth. All right. Are there any comments? Very quickly. I know I've babbled on a bit. Any comments, any questions? Let me shift to the assessments. I know, or the structure of what I've submitted. So I've put quite a few things online. What I've done, I've played around with a bit of AI. So please give me feedback on those podcasts, because I played around with Gemini and I created some podcasts that's about 10 to 15 minutes long. If it's too long, let me know. If it needs to be shorter, let me know, because I don't know how many of you can sit for 15 minutes listening through two people talk, two AI voices talking. So give me some feedback on that. I thought it's a bit of an innovation because we all learn differently. Some of us need pictures, we're visual learners. Some of us need music and sound around us and we need to talk, we need to ask questions because we are auditory learners. Some of us are tactile learners, so we write everything down, and if we're not writing something down, then we're not learning. And some of us are tactile learners. We need to touch, we need to do something in order to learn. So I've added a bit of everything. I've added video, I added sound, podcasts, I've added some reading, and so forth for each week, to sort of supplement the required readings. So there's two approaches to this course. There's two approaches to the degree as such, but to this course specifically. The one approach is you go through and you do all of the activities, and you just do them to get them done. And your focus is on the assessments. You do the assessments very well, and ultimately you'll get a very good mark. The other approach is to really throw yourself into this subject matter and really go down a rabbit hole and really learn as much as you want to, and really get to know a lot. And that will help, especially as you scaffolding. We call it scaffolding, which is a educational term or learning term. One course builds on top of the other course, builds on top of the other course, and that is how we scaffold the learning. So that is your options. I know there was a question earlier about class attendance. I don't actually know how to even measure class attendance. I don't even know if that's a thing. So my approach is that it is a flexi online class. We need to decide on a weekly meeting time, and I'll post a poll on the WhatsApp group. And then for me, if you engage in some of the activities, not all of them, if you complete the quizzes, for me, that will be enough. For me, the most important thing is to throw yourself into the assessments. The assessments are essentially what the mark for the course is going to be. But also the assessments are great. I designed both these assessments. They're fantastic assessments. They're very practical. They're meant to really stretch you. They're meant to be sort of more, they're meant to be a bit more practical in nature. They're also meant to be not just copying something into ChatGPT and then copying it back and pasting it and submitting it. It's meant to let you critically, think through the questions and answer them. So that is really my approach. So you need to tell me whether that approach, are you comfortable with that approach? If you're not comfortable with that approach, and you can always email me or drop me a WhatsApp. I try not to drop me a WhatsApp separately, but do if you need to. Email is always good because then we've got a record of our conversation, and that's always good to protect both myself and you. So if you need more help, more guidance, more direction, then you need to let me know. I've completed the first 3 weeks with activities and with podcasts and with quizzes, and you need to let me know whether that works or whether you need more or less. It all depends on you. All right. Guys, thank you very much for your time. It's great to have you guys sign on. If you can, just give me a thumbs up or some sort of emoji, just to let me know that you good. And yeah, have a good evening, everybody. I really enjoyed this evening. Alrighty, Kamisa, you had to hand up. Does that mean I answered your question, or does that mean it's okay?
Sorry, I used the wrong reaction. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, no problem. Alrighty, thank you very much, guys. Good evening, and we will meet each other again next week. We just don't know when. And please make sure that you're on the WhatsApp group.